Hey everybody, welcome to the KB Talk Show. I'm Chris.
I'm Brian.
And so the first round of the NFL playoffs just ended up. Let's start on the NFC. The first game was the Saints and the Lions.
That game was a shootout.
Oh, it was.
Like we predicted it would be. It was also the same outcome as we predicted. We both knew that each of them had a high-powered offense and that they'd be an airball game all day. But as we guessed, the Saints prevailed on top just because they had the better D and the better quarterback overall. Stanford is a good quarterback, but he's slowly evolving into an elite quarterback.
Yeah, that's I truly believe that in a couple years, I mean, the Lions are going to be really good. All of their guys, their star players, are really young. I mean, that defense looked so good out there. But I mean, like we said, Drew Brees is having an amazing year, and they ended up points in the 40s. I mean, I don't know who can stop them now.
You know, I do think somebody that can stop them is the Packers. I do think they will be the only team that has a chance to stop them in the NFC. AFC, I'm not sure yet, but as these games go along, maybe I'll get a better idea. But as of right now, I do think it's only the Packers.
And I agree with that. In the NFC, only shot is the Packers. So the other game we had in the NFC was Falcons-Giants, and man, that was not really a game at all.
That was not pretty on Matt Ryan and the Falcons' part. That was an ugly game. Like we said, we thought the Giants would win, but we didn't expect them to win by that much. Atlanta's always been, or not always, but they've been a good team recently. It's just they've had playoff woes. They can't seem to win in the playoffs in these big games.
And see, what I said to you was that Matt Ryan, it seems like in big games, he's only good at home. And you can't have that as a star quarterback. But I don't want to belittle Matt Ryan as much as I want to talk about how good the Giants' defense was in that game. I mean, they gave up no points right there in that playoff game. So the only 2 points scored was on a safety. So just a little slip up by the Giants' offense right there. But other than that, the game was all Giants.
It was.
So over into the AFC, the first game we had was Houston-Cincinnati, and that was, well, I'll just go ahead and say it. Both of us, we got both of the AFC games wrong this weekend.
Yeah. So we both picked the Bengals and the Steelers. The Bengal-Houston game, I guess I discredited the Houston's defense a little. I mean, I didn't give them as much credit as they deserve. I saw in this game against the Bengals, they proved that they are a playoff contender. And Yates, again, he was good. I mean, he wasn't phenomenal, but he's good. And they won.
And, right, I mean, but the same thing about that Cincinnati team. Most of their guys, Dalton, they're young, and then you've got their receiver Green. They're so young out there that they're just ready. I think they have more years to go than this Houston team.
Cincinnati has a bright future up ahead of them just because they've got some of those young guns who are really good and they could evolve into some elite superstars.
Right, but T.J. Yates he showed that he is a playoff quarterback in here, which is something that I didn't really expect because Schaub is out. But I mean, I guess it was good that Schaub injury happened earlier in the season because Yates got to come in, play a couple games, and now he's ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, that could have really hurt them if Schaub or Leinart, because they both got hurt. If both of them got hurt towards the later half of the season, because then Yates wouldn't have had the experience he got during the regular season to help him out in this playoff game.
I mean, but that defense was, I mean, the play that stands out in my mind was the J.J. Watt interception. He's a huge guy.
That took some athletic skill right there. The way he snagged that ball.
I mean, in that ball, it was literally like the ball was he just threw the ball. Dalton just threw it. And I mean, to go up and get that ball like that and take it in, he was a big guy, so it was kind of cool to see, but that was a really good play. And then the other game we have, I would say the marquee game.
Tim Tebow and the Steelers.
Yep, that's it. The Broncos and the Steelers. I don't know who outside of the Tim Tebow fan base or Bronco fan base actually had them winning, but the Broncos pulled it out in this one.
As much as we bash Tebow on this show, I would like to give him some props. That was a well-played game on his behalf. I do think he started to show that he can be a quarterback that's halfway decent, because so far I haven't seen really anything out of him. But congrats to Tebow on that was a great game. It was a great win. be curious to see what they do against the Patriots.
Right. And the thing, I'm not going to say he's an elite quarterback because I don't think anybody thinks he truly is. But, I mean, at halftime, he had only completed 5 passes. And, I mean, that's good. But the thing I think about Tebow is he can control the game. I mean, there's not many quarterbacks who, in the game right now, can complete 5 passes and have command of that offense like he does. I mean, everybody has Tebow's back. Anything Tebow does, that offense is good with. And he just, especially that last play in overtime, I mean, in that game, Tebow really showed up what everybody thought was a really good Steelers defense. And I'm not taking away from that defense at all, but Tebow exploited it like nobody really did this season.
He did, and once again, congrats to Tebow. Now we're going to move on to this coming week's games. First off, the NFC. We're gonna Packers and the Giants, rematch of a game in the regular season.
Right.
That'll be I think it'll be another good game. Giants, underestimated team, but they've proven themselves. Just like that year, they went all the way to the Super Bowl and they won it. I do think they can put up a fight. I still do think the Packers will prevail, though.
And what we were talking about is that Giants defense. I think it's going to be a little different from what we saw in the first game, which was a shootout. What was the final score, like 38-35? Something like that in the first game we saw. So, between the two teams, I think it'll be a little bit different. I think this is not going to be a battle between Eli Manning and Aaron Rodgers as it was in the first game as much as it is against the Packers offense and the Giants defense. Like you said, I still think the Packers are going to get through this one. I think that their offense is just playing at a level that no defense can really match up to.
Because Aaron Rodgers' ability to pick apart the defense.
Right. I mean, he's just so smart back there in the pocket. I think that they win in this game. And then the other NFC game that we have going on is San Francisco, New Orleans. And I think that's going to be a really good game.
That'll be offense versus defense because 49ers obviously have the one of the number 1 defenses in the league, and the Saints have one of the number 1 offenses in the league.
Right, and I remember one thing that stands out in my mind about that defense is I was watching a game, it was probably week 13 or 14, and it said San Francisco had not allowed a rushing touchdown so far up to that point.
I remember
and I said, wow, that's just incredible to go that long, play 12 or 13 games and not give up a rushing touchdown. I mean, that just shows this 49ers defense. But I'm going to stick with my pick, and I think the Saints are going to be able to pull this one out because I'm just riding this Drew Brees bandwagon right now, and I don't think anybody can stop him.
I'm going to stay with my original pick. I'm going to go with the 49ers. I do think defense will prevail in this game just because the 49ers have such a stellar defense, and
I mean, I'm going to stay with the Saints because that was my original pick. But, I mean, this is a very good game, and I could see it going either way. Yeah. I would not be surprised whichever team won.
Honestly, I could go either way, too. But I just kind of almost flip a coin.
Right.
I'm going to go with the 49ers.
And then over into the AFC, first game we have is we have Baltimore-Houston. And that's one, our picks are kind of messed up because we had those games mixed up. But this is also a repeat of what happened, of a game that happened in the regular season. And I believe Baltimore won that game 29-14. So we'll just see what happens. Again, I think it's going to be one of the 2 good defenses, a surprisingly good defense we saw last week from Houston. But I'm going to stick with my pick, and I'm going to go with Baltimore moving on from this round.
Well, since my pick fell through the roof, I'm going to have to, between those 2, I'm going to have to go with the Ravens. I think their defense is better. I think Joe Flacco has more experience, a lot more experience than Andy Dalton did against T.J. Yates. And I just think overall, with Ray Rice and that offense and their defense with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, I don't think they can beat them.
Right, and I was talking about the Houston defense, but I think Joe Flacco, he's proven he's good in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He's beaten the Patriots in the playoffs. He just had stumbles against the Steelers. But, I mean, Ray Rice is running everywhere this season. I see them.
Ray Rice has been phenomenal.
Right. I see him showing up this Houston defense and moving on. And then the other game we have, I guess this is probably going to be the marquee game again this weekend.
It's Patriots and the Broncos.
And that's another repeat of what happened this season. First time the Patriots pretty much blew them out. But, I mean, I see this Broncos team, I mean, no one picked them to win that first game. And now they're kind of that underdog. And the underdog is always going to have more, I don't know what it is, more momentum
going
or more.
Each game.
Right. And so I see, I mean, if no one else does, but I mean, I think the Broncos think they can win this game. And I think if Tim Tebow shows up, and one thing he didn't really do in that other game was make mistakes. I think if Tim Tebow doesn't make mistakes in that Broncos defense, Champ Bailey, I mean, he made a couple mistakes, but if the Broncos don't make mistakes, I mean, I could see him winning the game, but I'm still going to pick New England to win this one.
I just think I'm going to pick New England as well. I think Tom Brady's ability to pick apart defenses is just too good. I do think there are some defenses that can stop them, like maybe the 49ers or the Ravens, but I do not think that the Broncos defense will be able to. And I know the Patriots defense is dead last in the NFL, but I still think they'll be able to hold Tim Tebow.
All right, and then we're gonna let's talk about the BCS National Championship game that happened last night.
Yeah, the BCS National Championship was last night. Alabama won. That was predicted to be the same thing as almost the first time they met in the season. It was all defense, and that's what it was through most of the game because it was field goal after field goal. But it was only Alabama getting the field goals. LSU had a awful night. Jordan Jefferson was not on top of his game at all, and they just did not look like the undefeated team they were all season.
I mean, for LSU, I mean, it took them at least half the game or longer to even get into Alabama territory.
It took them 3.5 quarters to get across midfield.
I mean, they didn't look like the number one team in the country.
Not at all.
But Alabama, I mean, big ups to their kicker. He made 5 field goals, and he did miss the extra point. But I mean, making 5 field goals out there, I mean, that's pretty good. But I mean, this BCS, it kind of shows that the BCS isn't working as well as it should. But I mean, if Alabama played like this the first time they met, then Alabama would have won that game against LSU.
I think Alabama should have won that first game because I do think Alabama shot themselves in the foot. I believe they could have easily won that game because they had plenty of chances. They shot themselves in the foot. They had a couple missed field goals that didn't win them the game.
But big ups to Alabama winning that game, national champions.
Roll Tide.
Alabama, I mean, they won it a couple years ago, so I mean, they're one of the perennial teams in college football. So big ups to them. I mean, it's a tough loss for LSU, being the only undefeated team and making it. But I mean, this kind of gives meaning for a playoff system, because who wouldn't have liked to see Oklahoma State or maybe Oregon in that game, where they have more prolific offenses than these two teams, and who wouldn't have wanted to see like an Oregon offense against an Alabama or LSU defense? I think that would have been a really good game.
I do too, because the fans, they want offense. Sure, defense is great. We still want defense, but field goal after field goal, it gets boring after a while. We want to see touchdowns and just these high-powered offenses. I mean, I'm not saying that Alabama and LSU don't have high-powered offense. They do. It's just, I think there should have been more of it.
I mean, there were plenty of more games that are more exciting than this. I mean, the TCU game was more exciting than this. It was back and forth the entire game, and then Stanford, Oklahoma
State and Stanford, my personal opinion, was the best bowl game this year. Congrats to Oklahoma. That was a brilliant fought game. It was great.
And then I would say, because I like those games, they're so close down to the end. Like the Michigan State game I was watching, that took 3 overtimes. I mean, that's an exciting game, not a 21-0 win where it's just field goals right up until the end.
Exactly. Well, that's all we got for this week. Tune in next week, and we'll have our new playoff pitchers, who's in, who's out. So just tweet us, like our page, follow us, subscribe to us. Anything you want, send us an email. What do you want us to talk about? Baseball, basketball, anything. Those 3 sports. But yeah.
All right. We'll see you next week.